Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. It is Monday. I'm here with Phil, so you know what that means. We are talking more Lord of the Rings. So, we are into a very, very exciting part of Return of the King, and yeah, we're pretty much just going to jump right into it. So, picking up right where we left off, we see Pippin following Denethor and his guards carrying the still alive Faramir for him to be burned. And again, I said this last time, but we see just how crazy slash hopeless and despondent that Denethor has become, because he either doesn't realize that Faramir is still alive or does realize it, but at this point doesn't care. He is committed because, again, we said it last time, in his mind, Gondor was lost, right, Phil? So he's basically gonna take himself out and his son with him, right?
Pretty much. That's his plan because he sees this as his vision coming true. That Gondor and Minas Tirith are done for, and there's no point in doing anything. So he's deciding to take him and his son out, so to speak.
Now, your own speculation. Do you think Denethor truly did think that Faramir was already dead, or do you think he knew that Faramir was alive but didn't care?
Book or movie?
Either one.
Movie. I would say he was so far gone at that point. He might have thought that his son was dead.
Okay.
Legitimately thought his son was dead. Book wise, no. He knew and didn't care.
Gotcha. And of course, again, the why he wouldn't care. Everything he had been living for, been working for at that point, was literally being destroyed right before his eyes, because he had no heirs left. Boromir was dead, and he had become complacent in his role as steward, where, at least in the movie, we see him outright reject the idea of Aragorn coming back to reclaim the throne. And so if the city's ruined, if his role as steward effectively is rendered meaningless, what other choice could you have?
Well, I don't think it was just that he thought that his role as steward was done for, because at this point, Sauron and his armies are making him done for.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't matter if he thought if Aragorn was coming back and he would be no longer the steward. No, what he was seeing was his city under siege, practically knowing that it's only a matter of time before they fall, and it's the end, you know, and that's what he saw. Okay, that's what he was thinking. Again, you would say so similar things have happened, and hope that you fight on to the end, or
Yeah.
fight on for hope. Thinking that something is going to happen. So I would draw the analogy of something like that on the good side happening, the siege of Vienna, and when the second one especially, because
Okay.
they were
This
holding
was
out.
this was during the Crusades, correct?
No. This is way after the Crusade. This is 1627, I think it was.
Okay.
And during the siege of Vienna, even though they kind of felt there was aid coming, uh, they knew that the city had to hold out, that the city of Vienna was on its own. And 30,000 uh, Austrian soldiers holding it.
Wait a minute. I
Yeah.
think I know where this is going.
Yep. And
What-
it's 300,000 Ottoman Turks. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't even get, even when relief forces come, from other parts of the Holy Roman Empire and Poland and Italy. By the time they're massed there, they're still not nowhere near. You're only looking at maybe a relief force of 60,000 men. The odds, even with the relief force, are against them. Kind of similar to what Rohan coming there with their cavalry. That's only like 6,000.
Mm-hmm.
But the shock of it. Sometimes in battle, it's the shock. It's not the amount of troops you have, but the shock and the impact. And, well, similar what happens in the Pelennor Fields happens in Vienna,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much.
But we'll get to that when we get to it,
But
because
he's not seeing that. Denethor is not seeing none of that. I mean, in the movie, you see him. It's Gandalf that does the lighting of the beacons.
right.
All right. He don't even try to light the beacons. He doesn't try to summon more men of arms from other parts of Gondor. If you're going by the movie, all right.
Right.
He doesn't do that. Book wise, he does summon them, but it takes time for them to get there. So, yeah. But I think Denethor in either the book or in the movie, one thing can be agreed upon. He's determined that since he sees what his vision through the Palantir, it's over.
Right.
So,
Sorry, I was trying to time something right on YouTube because I got something special planned for a certain moments later. But anyways, Pippin tries to intervene on his own, and he tries to rescue Faramir from getting burned, but Denethor is not having it and says, "You're fired, basically. Go die in whatever way you think is best. I don't want you in my sight anymore," essentially. And so from there, Pippin tries to go and find Gandalf, who is having his men that was down at the gate retreat because they're getting completely overrun. Pippin eventually finds Gandalf and tells him what happened, and they both ride back up to the tomb, but they get stopped halfway up by the Witch King. And I know, Phil, this is one scene that you have brought up to me before that you take massive issue with. So would you like to go into detail?
There's two things you could say I could have massive issue with. First of all, the scene you described where Denethor is going into the halls of the stewards and other heroes of Gondor, and he pretty much throws Pippin out. Book is different. Book's a little different. Book is the tower guard, the captain, holds back on stopping Denethor and the other guards for trying to do the burning alive of both of them. So he, in a sense, breaks his oath, and he holds Denethor and the other guards to a point where Pippin can go get Gandalf. But by the time Gandalf gets there with Pippin, in the book, no interference from the Witch King. The captain of the guard, was forced to kill the other two guardsmen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he has broken his oath. So, not in a dishonorable way, but in an honorable way. And then what proceeds to happen is what happens with Denethor, Uh, but his story, trying to go as short as I can, he gets banished by Aragon from Minas Tirith, but he is sent with Boromir and becomes his captain of the guard in Osgiliath, in the city right next that they rebuilt. So that's his story. But yeah, he was supposed to be put to death afterwards, but again, no matter what, he broke his oath. But Aragon punishes him, but rewards him. So
Right.
yeah, but the major issue is the scene you do see in the movie of Gandalf coming across the Witch King, and the Witch King, first of all, Witch King doesn't have the power to use his uh scariness, you want to call it that, his
Mm-hmm.
fear power. That wouldn't
Yeah.
affect Gandalf being
A Maiar.
being a
Yeah.
minor. That wouldn't have happened. Second of all, he wouldn't have the power to destroy Gandalf's staff.
Only because only the only reason Gandalf had the ability to break Saruman's staff is because Gandalf by that point was instated, if I'm remembering how you put it, he was instated and in a higher position among the Astari by Eru Ilúvatar.
Pretty
Is
much
that
when he
correct?
brought him back, and he is now Gandalf the White, he's replacing Saruman. And
Right.
if you remember, even in the movie, he gives him a chance to turn back.
Mm-hmm.
He gives him a chance, especially in the book. He refuses to turn back. And only then does Gandalf say, okay, destroys his staff and casts him out of the order. In other words, saying, you're going to live, but you're never going back to Valinor.
Right.
So,
Of course, we know that when he dies, his spirit tries to do something, but then it gets caught up by a wind.
it reaches out. It happens similar with Sauron. The I guess you want to call it the spirit entity, tries to rise in the air and act like it's going to go west. And both circumstances, a wind from the west blows them east, or you can say even blows them and how can you say it? Blows them away. Uh, doesn't mean they're dead. Neither
Mm-hmm.
Saruman or Sauron is dead, and doesn't mean they don't have a form, but you will not see them in their earthly form. You will see them as a spirit if you are able to see in the undead world. Kind of like when they put on the ring. When you put on the ring, you can see the undead world.
Mm-hmm.
Similar, you'll see them there. But in their world, real world, living world, there'll be no more than a shade. So it doesn't mean they're dead. It's just they lost all their ability, you know.
Of course.
So, but yeah, and that's not just me. That's a lot of tokenists, if you want to call them that.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that he can destroy the staff was, yeah, yeah,
Was
too much.
it shouldn't have happened.
No,
Like
no,
I'll be honest, when I saw that scene for the first time, having not read the book, I didn't think anything of it, although I did think that's dumb. Why, that was a cool staff. Why'd he break it? But now that I know what I know, I get it now.
yeah, and it kind
That
of
shouldn't have happened.
lessens the power of Gandalf being what he is. Remember, the Witch King, yeah, he's powerful,
Mm-hmm.
but he is not a Maiar. You know,
Right.
he's not on the level of Gandalf or Saruman or even Sauron or even Radagast. He's
Yeah,
not on
he's
that
a
level.
at the end of the day, he was a man that got heavily corrupted by one of the 9 rings of men.
Yep. So, like I said, I guess it was Peter Jackson's idea, and I guess for that moment to make the Witch King seem like a mightier foe than what he actually was. And I don't
Right.
think they needed to do that at all. Uh,
But
maybe, you know,
but and this is kind of getting us back to the story, they hear a noise in the distance. And this is what I was working on in the background. They hear a noise in the distance. The Witch King flies off. And that's all I'll play of that. YouTube, that was under fair use. But still, effectively, the Wing Hussars arrive. Except
more so in this than you would even say Helm's Deep when
right.
Gandalf comes with the rest of the Rohirrim coming down the mountainside. Both are inspired by the siege of Vienna again, and the Polish king who led 3,000 Polish hussars cavalry,
Right.
and some 17,000 allied, mostly from Germany, some from Czech, what we call the Czech Republic. He led the cavalry down the mountain, and that cavalry charge is probably one of the biggest in history. And it succeeded in not only breaking the siege, but pretty much destroying the Ottoman army of 300,000 men. They just couldn't stand up to that charge. They tried.
Right.
The
And
wing.
real quick, I do want to mention the little bit of snippet that I played of that song. I put a link to the full song in the chat here. Highly recommend it.
And you have to remember, as Catholic, and that being precisely at that time a Catholic thing, that is always remembered on September 11th. Ironic, the other thing happened on September 11th, but yeah, the anniversary of that breaking of the siege of Vienna, the charge of the Wing Hussars, really the Wing Hussars gets the glory, but there were 17,000 other cavalry from other countries at that place, so it wasn't just the Wing Hussars. They were the lead, they led the charge, and it was the King of Hungary. I mean, not Hungary, Poland, that was in charge of the charge, but it wasn't only the Polish. But give him credit. He was the one to come up with the plan, and yeah, much similar. Like I said, both what happens at Helm's Deep, but here on the Pelennor Fields, it's a very similar thing.
Right.
It's remembered. That, like I said, as Catholics, and being that Tolkien was a Catholic, that was huge. So I'm not surprised that he implemented that in his writing of both the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Pelennor Fields. So,
so all of that said, of course, what we call them the Winged Hussars because that's what they're inspired by from actual history. But within the universe, this is where Theoden and the 6,000 Rohirrim arrive on the scene. And in memory of the actor who played Theoden passing away, which we covered that 2 weeks ago, I'm going to read verbatim the speech that he gives, at least from the book, before he leads the charge. He says, quote, "Arise, arise, riders of Rohan. Fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor. And I gotta give a shout out to that actor, rest his soul. He performed that beautifully, wouldn't you say, Phil?
I believe he did an excellent job. He's a good actor. Bernard Hill's a good actor. We probably only know him from Titanic in this movie, but he has done a lot on stage and in film. So, yeah, I would say I couldn't imagine anybody but him playing the King of Rohan. You know, he just did not that much of an impressive job.
Right.
So,
now, real quick, just because I'm including another link in the chat here of J.R.R. Tolkien himself reading that scene, and just the passion that he puts in his voice. You've got to listen to it. But anyways, back to the story of the movie. So the Rohirrim charge, and the orcs are completely just stunned by this. It's a slaughter. The Rohirrim are kicking butt and taking names. And this gives Gandalf, and of course the Witch King goes off to deal with this, leaving Gandalf and Pippin alone to go and rescue Faramir, which by the time that they get there, Denethor has already poured the oil on himself, and the 4 guards are approaching with the torches. But Gandalf and Pippin show up. Gandalf takes one of the guards' spears and whacks Denethor in the face again, while Pippin climbs into the fire to rescue Faramir.
there's an interesting thing about that scene. If you see the actor who's playing Faramir, as the actor that's playing Pippin is rolling him, he actually rolls his face into the fire.
Ooh.
You can see that. You can see the scene. If you don't believe me, you can go look real quick. I don't think you can show it, but you can go look on YouTube and you'll see that scene, and you'll see one of the. He's like, you're seeing Pippin pushing him, but when he starts to really push him over, his face goes right into it. Now, I'm not sure if it's one of that fancy fires that have the gel and it doesn't burn you, but yeah, or that fire is CGI maybe, but yeah, he gets whatever it is. You can see he gets rolled into that flame.
All right, I've got the scene pulled up. So again, YouTube, this is fair use. We're going to investigate this. All right, let's see. And I'll cut the sound down a little bit too. All right, here he is. He's jumping.
All right.
And
watch the push, and it shows his face. Watch his face in the flame.
that is, oh my goodness. That is, wow.
In the flame.
Yeah.
Even if it was just a second, he gets burned.
Oh yeah, I can see
Either
that.
that flame is fake, or it's one of them gel flames that doesn't burn, or it's CGI. But if it's not, then my man's a great actor. He took that with
He took that like a champ.
But I think that flame was CGI. Because there's no way you would put the actor in that position to get burned.
True.
But looking at it in that scene, again, you see his face gets rolled into that flame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, in the midst of all of this, Denethor sees what Pippin is doing and tries to strangle Pippin over it, or he just grabs him in his insane rage. But Pippin pushes him off, and of course, Shadowfax rears up and knocks Denethor into the fire. And again, he's got oil on him. And you see this moment of clarity that crosses over Denethor as he realizes Faramir is alive, because he's looking him right in the eye. And that moment passes, and then Denethor starts feeling the flames. and he runs. How he manages to get all the way from the crypt to the cliff where he falls off, I have no clue. But still, he manages to get all the way to that cliff
He is
and he
on
falls.
fire, so when you're going through pain and something like that, you tend to have a little boost of energy there. So,
Right.
but yeah, the one thing is the ending of Denethor running and throwing himself off the top of the, I guess you want to call it the cliff or whatever you want to call it. That's pretty much accurate. That is accurate. The actual,
Except for one detail that they left out, and I do very much remember this. He was not in the movie. He was not holding the Palantir. And I know this was something we talked about before, and I was watching for it because we had discussed it. He was not holding the Palantir that he has in the book.
And the only other difference is, like I said, the tower guard, the captain of the tower guard, doing his thing. I'm not sure if it's the tower guard that smacks Denethor's hand that has the fire that puts him on fire, Denethor, or if it's Gandalf. I don't remember that part. I'm leaning towards that it was the tower guard using his spear hit the hand that had the oil that ends up burning him and lights him on fire.
It could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I would have to go back and look at that, but we've already went back and looked at that scene once before. There's no sense in doing it again.
No, I mean not in the movie. Not in the movie. I'm talking book. Book wise, the guard is the one that does the holding off the other guards and Denethor from burning the Boromir.
Faramir, you mean?
Faramir, excuse me, Faramir. I mean, Gandalf and Pippin get there, but he, like I said, there's a fight. He ends up killing the other guards, and Denethor is on top of the little, I guess you want to call it, wooden stake pile that he's getting ready to burn. I believe in the book it's the captain of the guard that smacks Denethor's hand with the that's holding the oil. I mean, because he's talking to Gandalf just like he's talking to Gandalf in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the tower guard that smacks his hand.
Right.
So I think that's the only difference, But other than that, it's pretty similar towards the end, and the same outcome. Minus, like you said, he's not holding the Palantir when he's falling off in the movie.
Exactly. So with that, back to the actual battle, the Rohirrim are still absolutely laying waste to the armies of Mordor until they hear a noise in the distance, and in the direction that the orcs are getting routed, they see the Easterlings and Southrons making their approach with their Oliphants. And we might have mentioned this before, Phil, but in case we didn't, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't J.R.R. Tolkien taking real life inspiration for the Oliphants from the tanks he saw in World War One?
It kind of a metaphor, but I think he also modeled them after the Carthaginians who used elephants. Well, they weren't the first, but they were the most well known that used elephants to fight.
Isn't that where Hannibal comes from?
Carthage was Hannibal, but let's be correct on some 300 years before Hannibal. Alexander the Great's fighting the Indians in India, and they're also using elephants to fight in battle. So you can't give all of it the credit to the Carthaginians.
Okay.
Elephants started to become popular in some areas that had elephants to be used in battle. They were tanks. They
Hmm.
were they're ancient world tanks, Uh, but in this movie, they're pretty much used the same, as they did in our timeline in real life. So pretty much he did a good job in that. But yeah, I would say the metaphor for him is tanks, but I think he leaned also in real history like he done for a lot of things. We talked about this. I mean, the Rohan, the army's Rohan, are Saxons from
Yes.
from the Dark Ages. Well, the only difference between the Saxons and the Rohan, I mean, if you look at their armor, the way they act, and how they do things, they're identical. But the difference is the Saxons didn't really use horses. They were
Hmm.
more fighters on foot and as sailors, kind of similar to the Vikings. Uh, yes, there were some people that had horses, but not like you see Rohan with all horses. Them. That's the
Right.
only difference. But if you look at actual Saxon armor and how they wear it, they're identical to what Tolkien has given to Rohan.
Okay.
So
S-
little changes. Okay, Saxons were known as foot soldiers. My Rohan are used as cavalry. He changes things up, but you know, I like it. You know, but and yes, the Saxons used horns, like you seen in the movie when they blow the horn. Well, Saxons actually, when they went in battle, they blew horns, as a lot of the Germanic tribes did, and even the Vikings did. They used horns. Horns were sound to make before you went into fight.
okay.
So similarities, a lot of similarities. And Rohan, I mean, Tolkien, when he did this epic battle of the Pelennor Fields, he's drawing upon a lot of different things. Uh, Even when it comes to the fighting of the orgs, when they bring in up Krong, you know, all that, all that. So
Of course. So now the fight becomes even more difficult with the Easterlings and Southrons joining the fight with their Oliphants, and it becomes a very difficult fight. But again, they're still holding their own. Um, but eventually, the Witch King gets involved, and he attacks Theoden. And his now here's the thing. I know this is another big difference from the book. In the book, if I'm not mistaken, his horse Snowmane gets scared and basically falls on top of Theoden. Is that correct?
yep,
In the movie, the Witch King's dragon, Fellbeast, whatever you call it, bites basically bites Theoden and his horse together and flings him around in his mouth, and then his horse lands upon him.
well, the thing I took is from the book is I believe it's more the Witch King using the Nazgul power of fear. He put
Mm-hmm.
fear into the horse as well as fear into Theoden, and that fear was what caused the horse to sadly, uh, I don't want to say rear and then fall on him, but pretty much that's what happened.
Right.
And a horse is a very big animal. If it lands the right way, not only could it break a leg or limbs, but if it landed in the right way, if say it land across the chest, probably crush your ribs and break your spinal cord, make them paralyzed. You know, if not downright kill them. So on
Mm-hmm.
which is what happened. Uh,
Right.
I think a little bit of the movie when it comes to that part, the way they did it was more for entertainment as to be how Tolkien written it. And I like, personally, I like the way how Tolkien written it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I mean, it might be feel like nitpicking, but uh, you know, if picking the the beast grabbing the horse and him and flinging him around like a chew toy, that's okay. That's okay. I still think it could have came out better if he used how Tolkien did it.
I agree. But anyways, this is the part, the famous part where Eowyn, in her knight's disguise, stands up to the Witch King and starts scrapping with him. And this is also where we see the Witch King bring out his other weapon. So he's been using a sword this whole time, but then he also brings out
Chainmail.
his mace flail thingy. In the book, it's just a mace,
Mm-hmm.
but they decided to change it to a flail type weapon. And I remember watching this like deleted, like backstage sort of thing, where they're like, "Hey, let's just make this thing bigger and more spiky and more scary." And they did.
Mm-hmm.
It worked, but in the book, it's a mace.
Right. And also from the previous books, this is prophesized that the Witch King would not die by the hands of a man.
If I'm
And
not mistaken, Glorfindel said that,
yes,
right?
he said that to who was prince at the time, but ends up being the last king of Gondor.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened was during the Battle of the North, after the Witch King destroys the kingdom of Anor, well, it's already been destroyed. The last of the three kingdoms of Anor, the king of the last section, he goes to the north, finds these people, gets on a boat, and his hope was to travel south and get the help of Gondor. Unfortunately, it was during the winter, and the bay had frozen up when he set sail, and him and three of the Palantirs and some other artifacts of Anor, uh, they drowned, which ends the
Right.
line of the kings of Anor. Well, the elves and Gondor finally arrive, late to save the kingdom, but they
Mm-hmm.
go right immediately to battle against the Witch King. And the prince of Gondor, who ends up being the last king of Gondor, comes across the Witch King. And
Right.
much similar to what happens to Theoden, he wants to do battle with the Witch King. But again, the Nazgul have that power to put fear not only in men, but in animals as well. Puts
Mm-hmm.
fear into his horse, and he couldn't attack him. His horse wouldn't move. And the Witch King's taunting him. He's calling him a coward and everything, which he's not, but just his horse can't move, but it's in fear. And then once his horse gets over that fear, he goes after the Witch King, and Glyffindale goes up to him and stops him, and he says, "Look, the battle's won. Agmar is defeated, and it is no more. He's not going to die by your hand or mine. It's his fate is in the future, and he is going to die not by the hands of men."
Right.
So, and that's like, if I would say about good 400 or 500 years after the Battle of the Last Alliance. So you could probably say it's a couple hundred, if not 1,000 years difference. Here you're
Uh-huh.
coming to the end of where that prophecy comes true. And lo and behold, it's Theoden's niece. Unbeknownst to him that she, you know, traveled and let's get this right. In the book, as
Theoden
well
didn't
as
know.
emphasized in the movie, he's not telling her she couldn't come because she was a woman. All right. She was told she couldn't come because Theoden thought him and Ermir would probably die, and the only other person in line to rule is her.
Hmm.
So he wanted her to stay behind in case both of them got killed so she could rule Rohan. It had nothing to do about her being a woman and being able to fight. That had nothing to do with the reason why he chose that.
Right.
So book wise, that's stated. Movie wise, yeah, they kind of make it seem like, well, we're leaving her behind, kind of like Pippin's too small, and she was a woman. No, that was not
Right.
in the book. That's not what it was. Again, she was supposed to be the next ruler if both Theoden and Éomer were killed. She was the safety net for the kingdom, put it that way.
So another thing to point out while this is going on, by this point, the Corsairs have now arrived at where they're supposed to, and there's a band of orcs waiting for them to disembark. And of course, the guy that's in charge of this particular band is, taunting them, being like, "Come on, you slowpokes, get in here." And then Aragorn jumps out the boat, and he, Legolas, and Gimli joining in to the start joining into the battle. And we've already talked about this, so no need to go into it any further in depth. But the dead join in with them, and they overrun everything. And so while this is going on, again, Eowyn is facing down the Witch King. The Witch King uses his mace flail thing to completely destroy her arm, like broken arm completely, and destroys the shield too. And she's about to get killed when Mary sneaks up behind the Witch King and stabs him in the leg behind the knee with his sword. And another interesting detail that I learned recently, apparently he was able to do that in the book because he had an enchanted sword from the Barrows. Is that correct?
If that whole scene, I'm gonna say it, book wise, is different than the movie than that whole entire scene. All right, she's
Okay.
getting ready to fight him. He says the typical same line, "No mortal man can stand before me," and she takes off the helmet and she says, "I'm no man." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but what gives her the opening uh towards the Witch King was the fact that Mary stabs him. I don't want to say in the shin or the calf, but he stabs him in the shin and or the calf. I forget which part, and that shocks him. It gives him that moment where he does like a little paralyzed thing there. I guess with shock,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what gave her the opening to be able to stab uh, him in the
Hey,
helmet.
right.
You know, and which ends up killing him. Uh, where the movie, it's a nice little fight scene, but that wasn't a big of a fight scene. You know, where he's swinging the mace and she's dodging, and uh, it hits her, breaks her arm, and that's the arm. No, no, the arm that gets messed up was the actual hand arm that stabs the Witch King. Not
Of
the
course.
arm that you see in the movie where he flings the fail and it breaks her shield and breaks her arm.
Mm-hmm.
No, in the book, it's when she get similar to what happened to Frodo when he got stabbed, is what happens to her when she stabs the Witch King in the head. And if you notice, I'll not give him credit in the movie. Mary gets the similar pain in his hand that stabbed from stabbing the Witch King.
I noticed that, yes.
But if
In
you
fact, it
notice,
completely vaporizes his sword.
yeah, but you'll also notice he doesn't go need treatment in the hospital or the house of healing. They magically forget. I guess they forgot to put him there because he needed to be there. Because if you
Yeah.
stab the Witch King, or if he stabbed you, it's considered like a virus, either or.
Hmm.
Uh, like I said, she suffers the same way, not to the same degree, but similar to what happened to Frodo.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's why Gandalf goes and treats her. Uh, in a book, I think Mary does get treated at the House of Healing. So, but he's able to go with them to go to the Black Gate. But if you notice in the movie, you see him and you actually see him hold his hand, you know, and
Hmm.
then it's like voila, he's fine, but she's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just some
So
nitpick, it's nitpicking, but something to point out there.
it's completely understandable. So the Witch King is dead, and I know this isn't accurate to the book, but I do like the visual aspect of basically his helmet crumbling into him, and he literally just crumbles to the ground. I know in the book it's basically portrayed as he's stabbed and then poof, his clothes are completely hollowed out, but at least visually I think it's cool. And of course, while this is going on, Eowyn is trying to crawl her way toward where Theoden is laying, but the orc commander that's been leading them the whole time tries one last time to kill her, but Aragorn and Gimli jump him and he's done for. While all this is going on, the army of the dead are continuing to just plow through absolutely everyone. There's an impressive scene, of course, where Legolas single handedly takes down an Oliphant, which again, I'm sure maybe that could have happened in the book, but even
No,
if it didn't, it's cool visually.
it's
And
for entertainment purposes. You know, that's all. I still say all this, and just my opinion. The battle in the book is a lot better than the battle that we got on the movie, even though it is good. Okay, but uh, having Aragon arrive, and first of all, in the movie, when you see the charge of the Rohirrim,
mhm,
they don't scatter, even though the orgs do retreat. You don't see them running away to Oscaris and trying to get over the bridge. No, that didn't happen. They fell back. They didn't leave the field. They just fell back from the field, and that's why you see some of the orgs regrouping where you see them at the port.
right.
Okay, and then you've seen the reinforcements of the Easterlings. And
Mhm,
when Aragon arrives with the 400 Dunedain and other men from the south of Gondor, and including the Prince of Duluth, uh, it's a more epic, even though smaller, it's a more epic fight because even though they're still outnumbered, again, sometimes the impact of the a small force can have a big impact on a larger force,
that's
and that's
pretty much what actually happened
yeah,
with the Winged Hussars, because again, it was 18,000 of them against 300,000 Ottomans, right?
it was the cavalry charge. Doesn't mean the infantry they didn't charge. Only that was a cavalry charge. That cavalry charge is what caused them to break that army and drive it from the field. Not that the infantry didn't play a part, not that the artillery didn't play a part, but it was that cavalry charge, the
Hmm.
shock. Okay, so this is what's happened first with the Rohan. They did shock them, and it did drive them away from the gates of Minas Tirith, but they didn't drive them completely off the Pelennor Field. And again, the tide of battle comes back because the orcs and the Easterlings, now reinforced, are now pushing the men of Rohan back. And what ends up breaking them was Aragon, the Knights of Duluth, and with the Prince of Duluth, and the 400 Dunedain Rangers. So, yeah, like I said, the green undead kind of defeats the purpose. Again, they weren't there in the book, but that was more epic, Aragon, you see him not just as a leader, like you do see him when he's with the Fellowship, but on that battlefield, you see him as a king and a general because he strategized. He says, "Okay, Dunedain Rangers go over here, foot soldiers go here." And what little bit of the cavalry he had, because they were knights with the Prince of Duluth, it's the Prince of Duluth that leads the cavalry that's with his knights into the gates of Minas Tirith and starts breaking up what forces inside them gates. So it was an impact, and you see it what you don't see in the movie. It's like, even though the forces are small, they're like a nutcracker, and
Right.
they pretty much put the forces of Mordor in a nutcracker that they had no choice. There's nothing they could do. The only thing that upsets me overall in the movie, where's the other Nazgul? Because in the book, the Nazgul, all the Nazgul is there, not just the Witch King.
Right.
You don't see during any of the Battle of Pelennor Fields, besides a few moments when you see him break up the catapults in Minas Tirith, you don't see the Nazgul. They're magically taken out after they start breaking the gates in, and the Rohan from Rohan charges into them. You don't see none of the Nazgul beside the Witch King. The other 8 are mysteriously gone.
Exactly. I mean, we do see them later though at the Battle of the Black Gate, but that's next stream. We'll talk about that.
My question to the people that watch the movie, fans of the movie, you see them there when they're initially laying siege. You see them breaking up the catapults in the city. Then all of a sudden, movie-wise, with no explanation, they're gone.
That is very true.
So book-wise, they were there. Just so you know, book-wise, the Nazgul, all 9 were there.
Right.
So
getting back to the movie, though, by the time the battle is done, Merry and Pippin reunite. Merry is he is in a bad way, just in general. And Pippin's gonna help him. Éowyn reunites with Theoden, and Theoden unfortunately dies. And later on, as everyone's gathering up the dead, we see this really, really heartbreaking scene where Éomer spots Éowyn and presumably Theoden also, and he just lets out this heartbreaking scream of anguish, because here he is thinking that not just his uncle, but his sister have died. And we also see a really cool scene, and I don't know whether or not this is accurate to the book, but we also see a really cool scene of the healing room, and Aragorn is actually there getting hands-on with everything.
That's the House of Healing Hospital. Just think of it, hospital.
Okay. But still, is that accurate where Aragorn was there actually?
He goes in there and he treats Merry and what's her name?
Éowyn.
He treats them both. he uses his knowledge of elf healing that he was taught when he was living in growing up in Rivendell.
Right.
He's also, you have to remember, part of his title, even as king, is healer.
We also, and we kind of went a little bit out of order here, but we do see Aragorn also release we also see Aragorn release the army of the dead from their oaths, and they fade away, finally resting in peace.
Yeah. Which, book wise, didn't happen there. That happened in the coastal town that you see in the beginning where the Corsairs are coming up to the shore. And the battle, I wish I can remember the town's name, but he releases them there. He doesn't use them when they go into the Pelennor Fields.
Right. And so that's all that we're going to cover for the Pelennor Fields, but there's a little bit more to cover for this stream because we also have to find out what's going on with Frodo and Sam. So while all of this is going on, Frodo has been taken captive in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. And he's coming to after getting stung by Shelob. And he is completely stripped bare, and he realizes that he doesn't have the ring on him. Meanwhile, these two orcs are arguing over his stuff, specifically his mithril shirt. One orc wants to claim it for himself, another wants to take it to Sauron. The two get in a fight over it, and this basically snowballs into two different orc factions getting in fights with each other. And by the time Sam gets there, they're all dead. But real quick, there's one other thing that this is another difference in the book that you would not have seen at all had you seen it the theatrical version. They only include this detail in the extended edition, but even then it is so downplayed compared to what it is in the book. And that is the two watchers at the gate of Cirith Ungol. Because in the extended edition, you do see them, but they're literally just a statue. Whereas in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, in the book, they're basically statues possessed by spirits that act as the front guards for the tower. Is that correct?
Pretty much. To say dark spirits control the statues, they're able to move.
Yeah. So,
but just want to point out, if you notice, it's not said in the book, but in the movie, the two groups that you see fighting it out are real orcs and what you would want to call Sauron, not Solomon's, Sauron's Orcai.
okay.
All right. Remember, Sauron learned how do you want to put it nicely, breed the Orcai. He didn't create the Orcai. The Orcai is a creation and a new creation by Sauron. And if you look in the movie, you see the big argument of who's getting what from Frodo's. Let's just say they're looting him. They're taking this shirt, they're taking this dagger, they're taking this. But if you notice, the two that are fighting and the two groups that end up fighting are orcs and Orcai.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, they basically wipe themselves out by the time that Sam gets there. Well, for the most part, there's a few that are still alive. And we do see kind of a reference to one thing in the book where Sam, who by the way does have the ring right now, also hello to Crit. Thanks for joining. He says at work saying hello. Nice to hear from you, man. Sam has the ring on him at this moment. And I like the scene that they did include. I think this was just the extended edition. They did include this scene where Sam is coming up this staircase. He's got both his own sword and Sting in each hand, and the orcs are coming down the same set of stairs, and they see his silhouette, and Sam decides to make himself appear more intimidating than he is, where he's holding the swords out and he's growling at the orcs, and for a time they're actually scared of him.
That's borrowed from, and I'm not giving that Peter Jackson credit for. He borrowed that from the animation version. That's the animation version. Book it's there, but that's not. There's no way of showing it. Okay?
Right.
But it's in the anime version. You see the Return of the King. That's pretty much what Sam does. He growls, but in the movie you see maybe a couple of them. There's a little bit more alive than what the movie shows, and Sam has to deal with them. And he was doing the classic Samwise thing. If you remember, he's pretty deadly with a frying pan, right?
Yes.
Well, in the anime version, he's using the sword and the frying pan. You know? And you have to remember that's based upon a cast iron frying pan. You don't want to get hit with one of them.
Oh, trust me, I own one. I love it for cooking, but yeah, it is heavy.
Yeah, so you can imagine the damage he does, swinging that, and then, like I said, finish him off with a sword. So, but that scene, especially showing it, but you can't show a book, but showing it, that comes from the anime version. In
right.
the anime, you see the character do the same thing, and yeah. So there's other ones that we talked about before that Peter Jackson did borrow a lot from the anime.
I'm trying to find something here. I want to try and find specifically what it is that you are talking about. Talk so that we can show it. Give me 1 second. Where are you? Okay.
I think the whole little sequence in the anime is about 3 minutes.
I think I found it. But let me bring this in. And for the record, this is a different animation than what Ralph Bashki did. This is Rankin Bass. But watch this. Also, that's Sam. Look how ugly that thing is.
Now Frodo can't be far away.
All right, skip ahead just a touch.
They're not all dead.
Kill them! Own them! Boil them!
There's a sweet one for you.
Split them in two!
Can't let him have the ring.
You get the point, basically.
Yeah.
I remember watching that movie when I was a kid, and it's interesting, to put it nicely.
Well, it was made at a different time. That was made back in mid-70s.
Right.
So your way of making a movie, anime movie or cartoon movie is different than in today's market and how
exactly.
they do things. And again, you had to remember they never thought it would be possible to make the Lord of the Rings into a actual live action movie.
Right.
That was most all the studios said it's impossible. This is before you had the ability to make trilogies. There were a few. You had Planet of the Apes. Pretty much that was if you want to classify trilogy.
Right.
But the movies were made because, and the only reason it got approved was because this was the only way to ever get the Lord of the Rings out there, outside of the book. And from what you would have is, if you back in the day listened to radio, some radio stations would actually take it and, have voice actors act it out over the radio. So that was it. So yeah, it looks a little bit corny, but that's because that's what is that, about good 50 some years ago.
Exactly.
People 50 years from now are going to look back at stuff that we're looking at now and says it looks a little corny. Just as time goes on, that's how things are. But what's corny for us now is not corny for us then. So
yeah. So continuing on, by the time Sam gets to the top of the tower, the leader of the not Uruk-hai orcs gets back, and he is torturing Frodo, threatening to stab him. But Sam stabs him from behind with Sting, and we see Frodo and Sam reunited, and Frodo is overly apologetic. Well, I wouldn't say overly, but very apologetic over believing Gollum and sending Sam away. And Sam accepts his apology and says that he's had the ring the whole time. And then we get this bit of tension between Sam and Frodo, where Frodo's asking for the ring back, and Sam is hesitant to give it back. So I took away a very different meaning from this scene than I did before. All previous times I had seen this scene, I thought it was Frodo still being under control of the ring and like demanding it back, almost like Bilbo did from Frodo. But this time around, I noticed a hesitation from Sam that I never noticed before, as Frodo is trying to get the ring back, almost as if Sam wants to keep it. So what do you think's going on there?
That's the way for the movie to imply it that way. I will differentiate here. I like this scene better in the anime that we see, because in the anime it's a little bit more, how can you put it, gruesome, because when he goes up there to rescue Frodo,
I'm gonna bring up the scene again. Give me a second.
He's being whipped. He's being whipped, literally whipped. So not only is he beaten up, emotionally because of the ring, not only is he a little beaten up physically because of being stabbed by the stinger of Shelob and overcoming that, now you got an orc that is beating him with a whip.
Which I have right here, so let's watch that.
Stop that, you pig!
And there again is Frodo laying there having just gotten whipped. But watch what happens when Frodo learns that the ring isn't gone.
And so, even if we get out of here, we can't escape, for evil is everywhere. And only elves can escape Middle-earth. They board the white ships at the Grey Havens and sail.
Wait, hold on. We're not there yet.
Samwise, you are a marvel.
I'll keep it round my neck, for it's too heavy for you to bear in your condition.
Watch this.
Give it to me. Give it to me at once. You can't have it.
All right, Mr. Frodo. Here it is.
And then corny song, but still, basically the same thing as what Bilbo did to Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yep. Well, you know what? You can't be too hard on Frodo, because even if you would say he's obsessed with the ring, and let's say at this point he is obsessed with the ring, he knows that if anybody else gets a hold of that ring, they're going to be corrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if, there's a little resilience there by Sam, eventually going to corrupt them. And then what's going to happen? Frodo got to kill Sam. I think it was more, I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do. This is my job. Yeah, he sounds like a little bit of a obsessed, but I think it was also part, yeah, I can't let you keep the ring. You can't keep it,
Right.
So I could see both points being done at the same time here. So, but yeah, I do like when, especially in the anime one, that yeah, you hear the corny song. You didn't hear no corny song in the movie version. So
just remember, Phil, where there's a whip, there's a way.
Always.
But anyways, though, we get that scene where Frodo takes the ring back and basically lays it out for Sam that the ring is his burden to bear, and if Sam had kept it, it would corrupt him, and Sam ultimately agrees, and from there they disguise themselves as orcs, and that is where we're going to stop.
One thing I will point out, and it has to be pointed out, you'll notice, well, especially in the movie, that Frodo doesn't get his uncle's special dwarven shirt.
The mithril stuff?
Yeah, because minus the ring, they had sent all that to the tower where Sauron's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Cash.
So, like I said, it's important to point that out. That's missing, which will show up again and make a good point of it. And then further as we go on to the movie, that is Mithril. Sure,
right.
It's missing.
Also, real quick, Virginia, this is for you.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And hello, Ian. What's up?
So, yeah, we're almost there. We're almost at the end.
We are almost at the end. In fact, if we can manage it, we're not. So here's what's going to happen, guys. Next week, there is not going to be a Lord of the Rings stream because next Monday is Memorial Day. So we're going to take that day off, enjoy it with your families. So the Monday after next, we're going to make that. Can we do it, Phil? Make that the last stream. Cover the entire rest of the movie.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so that's going to be a big one, guys. So you'll definitely want to stick around for that. As far as what else is coming up tomorrow, I got to double check with him, but tomorrow I believe I'm bringing back Chris for another beginner series on the video game series Infamous. So that was a PlayStation exclusive where you played it. It basically is a superhero story where you could either go the hero route or the villain route. Really interesting stuff. I played one of the games a while ago when the PS4 came out. Wednesday, Phil and I are getting back together, and we are doing the first installment of our retrospective on Alice Cooper. So, for those that have not seen our music retrospectives before, we take an artist and we go album by album and just give our thoughts on the album and, of course, any relevant history that was surrounding the album as to why it turned out the way it did. And for this particular stream, we're going to be focusing specifically on Alice Cooper's career from 1969 to 1978. So that's the albums Pretty's For You all the way up to From the Inside. Which, quick question about that one, Phil. Do we want to include the live album?
I guess not. No.
Okay. No live album. So that's Wednesday. I do want to let you guys know one thing that is not going to be happening, and that is we are not going to be continuing with the tournament Smash Brothers stuff with TDK. That's been suspended for a bit, and that's all I'm going to say with that. And then Friday is going to be our open panel discussion on how our world history affects our entertainment. So we got some good stuff coming up soon. Be sure to stay tuned for all of that, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So anyways, we will see you guys all later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, everyone, the Force is family.
Where's my money? Where's my paper?